Welcome to the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Norris. We're going to grow your leadership through neuroscience, psychology, and theology. Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 9 of the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. If you're new to the podcast, my name's Patrick Norris, and our goal today is to help you lead with a whole heart, a healthy brain, and a soul on fire. I'm so glad that you're with us. Today, here in episode 9, we're with my friend Joyce Hill. She served as the organizational director of Fortune 500 companies like Sprint Telecommunications, State Street, H&R Block, and Chrysler Financial. Joyce has worked with executives in individualized coaching, multi-tier feedback, personal development plans, and change management. Her work with these organizations includes cultural change, talent development, succession planning, team interventions, performance management, retention strategies, and employee engagement. Joyce is also certified at the highest level of expertise in behavioral personality assessments. From her academic background and time in C-suites, her experience has a rich knowledge base and has been catalyzed for the last 12 years as an adjunct professor at Avila University, where she facilitates numerous courses in the Masters of Science in Organizational Development. Today, she is honored to serve on the Board of Counselors of Avila University. On today's episode, we're going to pick up our conversation from episode 4 with thoughts around leadership codependency, emotional struggles with team feedback, and empathetic listening, as well as tactics to give emotional room for processing whatever is happening in the moment. This episode is more about a conversation with a close friend than an interview. I'm grateful to Joyce for allowing me to focus much of our time on my passion, learnings, and story around codependency as a leader. She was so gracious to support the ideas and fill in the gaps. This conversation is filled with takeaways, and I can hardly wait for you to experience it. But first, I'm so glad to have you with us wherever you get the podcast or the video version on YouTube. We drop new content every week. We shoot for Thursdays of every month. If this podcast is adding value to your leadership in life, I'd just like to ask you to help us out. Subscribe to the podcast, like it, review it, make comments, and also help us get the word out by sharing on your social media platforms. Red Ink Revival platform is for all leaders in every sphere of leadership. However, my 30-plus years of senior leadership experiences have all happened in the context of church and ministry. So many of my stories are laden with church world stories, and the emphasis would be very applicable and pertinent to a pastor. The principles, though, will cross-pollinate no matter what sphere you lead in. Well, today's episode is brought to you in partnership with River Valley Conference and Marketing with Wisdom. River Valley Conference is an amazing pastor church leader conference. I landed at one of their one-day events here in Kansas City, and it was absolutely off the charts. At River Valley Conference, hosted in Minneapolis, Minnesota, you're going to find a bunch of like-minded pastors and ministry leaders. The event is hosted by some top-tier leaders in Rob and Becca Ketterling, along with their River Valley Church team. The conference takes place over 2 days to inspire and equip teams to build strong and thriving churches in their communities. Dynamic speakers, powerful worship moments, and practical breakouts will inspire your team and bring insight and solutions to the problems you're facing. In fact, even the Red Ink Revival team will be facilitating a breakout. Come meet our team of psychologists and therapists. We'll be all there. We want to see you and your teams hold nothing back as you step in to all that God has for you. River Valley Conference is June 8th and 9th, 2020. Go to rivervalleyconference.com. For all our Red Ink tribe, you get a discount code. Just put in Red Ink for $10 off. I hope I get to see you there. Now also, I want you to check out Marketing with Wisdom. Wisdom Moon's the best. Marketing with Wisdom's a full-service Christian marketing agency that works with churches, businesses, nonprofits, musicians, authors, podcasters, and a whole lot more. They are helping the Red Ink Revival brand get us and our thoughts out into the world. Go check them out at marketingwithwisdom.com. Be sure to tell them Patrick Norris sent you. Let's go now to this week's episode number 9 with my good friend, Joyce Hill. Well, I'm a recovering codependent as a human. It shows up in my leadership profile. And what you just described is so real for me. And this is the same for the CEO. Mm-hmm. If somebody disagrees with you and you struggle with feedback, you struggle with what they're saying about you, it really is important to look at a codependent profile, because what is happening is you're over-identifying with owning the other person's emotional state or even their intellectual state, that it's yours to own. And as leaders, it's a weird line, because we know that leadership is influence. Yes. And that if I'm a good, quote unquote, good leader, that means that I should be able to influence people to my direction. Right. And yet, if somebody has an opinion that's different than your leadership, and you emotionally are owning that, you're over-identifying with that, you'll end up then moving into fight, flight, freeze. You'll move into that harsh, caustic, or shut down, or some hyper reaction to it, because you feel like that you're not okay if in fact you can't own the choices, the emotional state, or the intellectual thinking of whoever you're talking to. And it's just very real for me. Mm-hmm. Because what you just gave the illustration of, somebody that you turned and walked away from. Well, I know that whenever I can emotionally tune in to the person, so usually when I'm under attack, I'm thinking all rational, I'm thinking strategic, I'm thinking argument, I'm thinking debate, I'm thinking how to win or to make sense of what they're saying to me. Mm-hmm. Well, what I have learned is if I'll just say, wait, what if I just tuned into the person emotionally and asked myself internally, without verbalizing it, what's going on in them? Yeah. Where are they coming from? What is influencing their perspective? What of their perspective is being motivated by their pain, and what's being motivated by the good that's in them that sees things that I don't see? Mm-hmm. And what happens is when I can do that, I move into what we call differentiation. Right. I'm able to separate myself from them to know you're you, I'm me. Right. And now then that gives me health in the codependent patterns that typically would trigger off. Mm-hmm. And now then I can sit there and be like, oh my gosh, I wonder what's happening on the inside. I wonder what went into this. Like the CEO that day that blew up on his report. If I'm in that meeting and I'm the direct report, the best thing for me to do is be able to sit there and separate myself emotionally from him. And be able to say to myself, something's going on in him that's unhealthy. Something got triggered in him. It probably goes back to his childhood. Right. And if I'm able to emotionally tune into that, the differentiation of that gives me, first of all, it moves me from a victim position. Mm-hmm. And now then I'm in a position to where I have power of my own choices. Right. And I feel that. And then I can have a sense of boundaries. Mm-hmm. I can understand how I want to manage that. Mm-hmm. And I can determine what actions I need to take from here. But I know as a recovering codependent model, I have a tendency I'm triggered way off, fireworks already firing off.
I was going to say,
long before that happens.
The real reaction is, I'm going to either run out of this room as quickly as I can. Yes. Or what can I do to get back at how he just treated me? Yeah. Yeah. All of those things that's the truth of what's really happening there. And there's something else you said earlier that I think it's really important for us to put the practicality behind it, because right now people are listening to us sharing these thoughts, right? And you shared how during that time I have to stop and I have to think about, what's going on with them today and, what's causing them to act this way and what's this and what's that. And people that are probably listening to us talking are going, who's got the time?
Right. Right.
Come on, I've got to make a split-second decision here. I don't have time to self-reflect. It's not, hold on a minute. and let me think about this for a second.
Yeah.
And then you come back with your response. And so, yes, initially, I think it's so important for us, and this is what I coach leaders on, is initially, it's going to be more work. Initially, it's going to take a couple extra seconds or two for you to be able to process through this.
Yes.
But that practice, that constant application of that will make it automatic. It's just like driving a car.
Yep.
When you first learned how to drive a car, you had to think about the gas, you had to think about the steering, you had to think about checking out the mirrors, you had to think about all these things. Now you get in the car and you probably don't even remember what you did because it was so automatic.
Yeah.
And the same is true with this. So I think it's important for us to really share the fact that, yes, initially it's going to take some work for them to pause and take that moment.
That is so true and so good. And I have done years of that work.
Yeah, yes.
And so I am at a place where I can do that, but you're absolutely right. When a moment like that happens, it's easy for me to, I say easy, I have to be conscious. I have to tune into it, to say, wait a minute, there's something going on here that's much bigger than this moment. And it's not even about what's happening today. This is something that's built into the survival instincts of whoever I'm talking to. And so, doing exercises, some of the exercises that I've done, and I'd love to hear if you have some as well, but what I've done is anytime for me personally that I have emotions about anything, just in my own private, personal time, I'll ask what's the narrative behind that emotion? And I'll dig down on that and ask the question, well, what does that mean to me? And then whatever the answer to that is, I'll ask, what does that mean to me? And I'll get down to what ultimately becomes the root fear. And when I can, see that in myself, then through practicing that and knowing how much of those root fears were formed by childhood experiences all the way to today, I'm able then to take that mapping as a template and put it over somebody that I'm talking to. And then, one of the things that happens for me is whenever I get triggered, I will realize that my need to convince them is more about me than it is leading the organization or leading them. And so to overcome the whole codependent thing, sometimes what I'll do is be like, this doesn't matter. And for me, it's just better for me to walk away. And I'm not always talking about organizational leadership. I'm talking even about just social settings.
Absolutely.
But to walk away from it without feeling the need to own the other person. And it's just been very, very helpful to me. Do you have an exercise or anything that you have ever done yourself or coached people in to help them emotionally regulate?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've learned, and probably I do more of it today than I've ever done before, and that is when I'm dealing in those situations, especially if it's an interaction, because I think that's what's important. Is let me back up. First of all, I have to stop and think as to why am I reacting the way I'm reacting? What's causing me to either feel like I have to take control, I have to be the one that is kind of leading them in the direction I need them to go. And why do I feel that? Well, I feel that I have to have control because it's triggering something that I have experienced in my background. When I was a kid, I was bullied. I was made fun of. I was that piranha in school that no one ever wanted to be around because of being teased and bullied and what have you. And I felt so out of control because, no matter what I did, I couldn't get people to like me. I think going through school, I had like one good friend. Thank God I had one good friend. Thank you, Lord, for giving me that one good friend. But I felt so out of control that I couldn't change what people were saying and how they were acting towards me and treating me and that kind of thing. And so whenever I'm in those situations where I feel out of control, it takes me right back to grade school, to high school. Yeah. I mean, I might as well just be walking the halls of Stevenson High School in Livonia, Michigan, because it's just taking me right back there. But when I'm dealing with an interaction with someone and I know that there's something going on with that person, that what their response is coming from some emotional turmoil that they're experiencing, one of the things that I've done that's really helped me, instead of typically responding with a statement back to them, I often respond with a question.
Yeah.
And so that question might be, so let's say that they're talking to me and I can tell that they're under stress or pressure and perhaps their behavior is not as positive. They're just almost attacking me, if you will. And so my question to them, a statement might be to them, why are you saying this to me? Or I'll attack back, if you will. Yeah. I'll throw a dig back at them. But instead, what I'll say is, well, why are you experiencing that? Or why are you feeling that? Or why are you saying it that way? Or why are you seeing things that way? So I'm asking that additional question.
Yeah.
That often gets a different conversation going on. So rather than attacking on their attack to me, I ask them a question about their attack to me. Because it isn't usually about me. Like you said, it's not about me. Yeah. It's about them. But I'm thinking it's about me because I'm going back to high school.
Right. Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. That's great. I want to invite you to one of our Red Ink Revival Leadership Retreats. Retreats are 40-hour plus intensive experiences led by psychotherapists, neuroscientists, and tenured pastors. These amazing intensives help pastors, staff, and marketplace leaders lead wholeheartedly in every sphere of life. Our retreats are profoundly helpful to you as you lead your organization. However, the most important person you will ever lead is you. Pastors and marketplace leaders struggle with the same emotional drivers. Statistics show that 70% of pastors struggle with depression and fear of inadequacy. 77% feel they do not have a good marriage. 90% are workaholics. 64% are engaged in secret activity around alcohol, drugs, and sexual behaviors. 84% wish they had a processed friendship that they could confide in, but grieve the fact that they don't have such a person. Today's leaders are painfully struggling with depression, isolation, anxiety, and panic attacks, and then powerlessly ruminating over what coulda, shoulda, woulda been. Then to right the ship, leaders tend to chase the illusion that a greater performance and a greater success will quiet the enemy in their souls. But performance, even if gained, measured, and celebrated, never quiets the soul. These ruminating emotional states gain momentum over days, months, and years and give power to unmanageable behaviors like rage in marriage, avoidance as parents, or addictions like alcoholism, recreational drugs, pornography, or sexually acting out. For the spiritual leader, succumbing to one or more of these throws them into a firestorm of shame that ultimately keeps them in a cycle of bondage. Yet neurobiologically, we have learned that inordinate behavior is never about the ability to white-knuckle discipline through the temptation. The behavior is driven by emotional griefs, losses, and relationship injuries from our backstories. These emotional memories become embedded into our brain's neurocircuits. Until these memories are addressed and appropriately reprocessed, the struggler will continue to grow in the struggle until there comes the day of public discovery and painful disclosure. Red Ink Retreats provide hands-on experiences in concepts, techniques, and coaching derived from theology, brain research, and psychological modalities. Our goal is to improve your individual leadership satisfaction, releasing a freedom for an energized life and a surprising greater performance. Go to redinkrevival.com and click the Retreats tab. You'll be inspired by previous retreat attenders. You'll hear their stories, and then you can dream of what could happen if you attended a retreat yourself. It might bring exponentially more fruitfulness to your organization. It might save your ministry, your marriage, your kids, and maybe even your self-respect. What is the value of leading wholeheartedly? So what are you waiting for? Go and register for our next retreat. Thank you for letting me share our Red Ink Retreats dream. Well, I didn't know until I went through my certification program with some addiction professionals, some high quality psychologists began to role play what it's like to give therapy to a narcissist and an attacking classical narcissist. So, a narcissist that's in a classical sense will walk into the therapist's room and start criticizing the room, the color of the paint, and then when the first conversation's happening, the narcissist will ask the credentials because only the best people are going to be able to give me therapy. And then the narcissist will criticize the therapy that's actually being given and try to adjust.
You've just described a few of my coaching sessions with leaders.
For real.
Yeah, completely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because when I watch these psychologists one-on-one role play and watch them dismantle the attack without fighting.
Yeah.
Which I had never seen that. I thought, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And what they would do is exactly what you're doing. As you described that, it's immediately go into the emotional space with the narcissist.
Yeah.
And actually saying to them something like, I'm experiencing that you are very upset right now in the way you're describing something, and how you're irritated in this moment. Can we talk about that? What are you feeling right now? Where's it showing up? What's that mean to you?
Right.
And to watch that bring a sense of regulation and self-awareness to the narcissist, because there is no, and this is important, there is no classical narcissist that is free from trauma. They are the way they are because they have been traumatized at a pretty significant level.
And often their narcissism is their shield of protection.
It's armoring.
That's right.
Sure is.
That's
absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
So I do, man. I love what you're talking about. I know, even a funny story. I was driving down in an area of Kansas City. I was on my way to an appointment. Stopped at a stoplight and was needing to call the person. I was running late. Needed to call the person I was going to go see, and I look up. And I'm trying to find on my phone, look up, and the light's green and has been for a little bit. And so, I don't think anything about it. I just take off driving. Nobody honked, nothing. And I go driving. Here in a minute, I've got police lights behind me. And of course, me, I honor police. I just have such respect for them. And so I pull over and he walks up to my window and he says, do you know how long, real angry, do you know how long you were sitting at that light? And I said, well, all I know is I looked up and there were several people, and I said, I'm sorry that I did that. I'm endeavoring to have a posture of submission and surrender, not trying to get out of a ticket in some kind of ulterior motive, but just I want to honor the police. Well, he wouldn't let up. He says, were you texting? I saw you looking down. Were you texting? And I said, no, I was actually trying to call the guy that I was trying to find his number that I'm running late to. And he said, can I see your phone? And I said, sure. So I showed him the phone. He could see where it was. Still wouldn't let up. And so I did just exactly what I described there. It's a powerful, powerful phrase. And I said to him, sir, I'm experiencing that you're really angry with me. Is that what you want me to experience right now? And it wasn't accusing.
Right.
I said it in a way where he knew that all I'm doing is just trying to, and he's like, oh, no, and totally regulated him down.
Yes.
And then he said, I just see people, as a police officer, I see guts all across pavement all the time. And I'm like, at a stoplight? I didn't say that, but that's what I thought. But that phrase that tunes into people's emotions.
Yes.
And so often when people are attacking me, I armor up and want to fight them back. And I've been gifted with verbal abilities that I can win a lot of arguments even if I'm wrong. But I never feel good about myself.
No.
I leave those spaces thinking that the win should give me contentment, and it actually sets me back.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that whenever somebody attacks me, there's something bigger going on. And so if somebody attacks me, rather than fight them back, just simply address that and say, I'm perceiving you're not feeling loved, or you're not feeling seen. As a pastor, that would be a way to deal with it. I'm perceiving that you're experiencing yourself some disappointment. And can we talk about what that made you feel like, and why that you are feeling what you're feeling? And it's amazing how people, when they're seen, the argument shifts.
It does. And I think one of the reasons it does is because we're not seen.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yes.
Again, we're so busy going from one task to the next accomplishment, to the next whatever is on our to-do list for the day, that we don't take the time to truly see people.
So good.
And I learned years and years and years ago, I had the opportunity right out of high school to do some volunteer work at what we called at the time crisis centers. And so when I went to work there, you had to learn empathy. That was some of the training, is empathic listening skills and learning empathy. And soon after I started there, I actually ended up running the training for that.
Wow.
And the use of empathy and empathic listening has so much power behind it.
Yes, it does.
Because people feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel understood.
It's amazing.
When you do that. And if there's one thing that I try to express and teach and coach people on, it's empathic listening. And people often get that a little confused, though, because then they think, well, is that just that, touchy-feely stuff, and I have to be all gooey and, mushy and all that? No, that's not what it's about.
Right.
It's about picking up on the emotions.
Yes.
And a lot of times people don't articulate their emotions.
No,
they don't say, I am angry.
Yeah.
They show anger,
yes,
but they don't say I am angry, or I am hurt. They show hurt because, anger actually is hurt, is the manifestation of hurt.
That's so amazing.
But they don't show that. But if you can tune into those emotions, it's almost like it catches them off guard.
It does.
And they stop in their track.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden they're thinking, whoa, wait a minute, you really see me.
Yeah.
You get me.
Yeah. And when you do that, again, it differentiates you. You're no longer enmeshed. Right. You're no longer living in codependence. You are aware of who they are and able to say, I'm not you, you're not me. And what is crazy to me in the world of neuroscience is that all of the fight, flight, freeze that has them in their moment, in their meltdown, comes from, just to put it into a raw placement, it comes from the amygdala.
Yes.
The fight, flight, freeze. What's wild is there is another part of the brain that can regulate the stress around the amygdala called the anterior cingulate.
Yeah.
And the anterior cingulate is primarily active, and it's releasing its neurochemicals whenever you're in empathy, compassion, and gratitude. So if I tune into the emotional side of a person, like you're talking about, just by doing it with empathy immediately regulates my amygdala.
Completely.
And then I move into a place where the anterior cingulate goes around that directly to the pleasure centers of the brain, where you feel contented and alive and happy.
That's right.
Tuning into somebody's emotions is the quickest way for you to move towards happiness.
Completely.
In life.
Completely. So well said. That is well said, because that is so much of what happens. We don't realize that by us helping others to become aware, that it's helping us as well.
Yes.
You know, it's through, you know, the walks that I've taken in my life of learning about me,
yes.
truly learning about me, because the thing is too is that our emotions, the first models of our emotions is our family life.
Yes.
You know, we learn how to regulate or not regulate
so
in our
true.
family life, right?
I heard somebody say, keep the thought, but I heard somebody say the reason that our family triggers us so much is they installed the buttons.
Completely. Completely. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and you know, I often help people dealing with conflict, right? I teach, in fact, one of the classes I teach at Avila has to do with conflict systems and resolution and all that kind of thing. But the thing is our first models of dealing with conflict are our parents.
Oh, yeah.
And if they're good at dealing with conflict, we'll grow up and have, and have some decent skills under our belt, right? But if they're terrible at it, my parents were avoiders. Guess what? What's my default mechanism in dealing with conflict? I avoid it. I run the other way.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
But I've learned that that's not, there are times when avoiding the conflict is the right approach in dealing with it.
Right.
But there's many other ways of dealing with the conflict.
Yes.
And so, but that is so, I love what you said about the fact that, because that's so true, that when we are helping others, the feeling that we get, that euphoric feeling of helping someone to manage through what they're feeling actually helps us to manage through our own emotions.
Yeah.
That is so true.
In personality assessments or in leadership as a whole, you have the soft skills, which are the emotional side of life and interpersonal. And then you have the hard skills, which is the actual sciences of application of whatever the
technical knowledge, all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. Right. And so you have the soft skills. So when somebody, as people may be listening right now, thinking, my gosh, this podcast is so about the emotional. I really want to drive the nail in. There is nothing, and when I say nothing, what I mean is nothing we ever do that is absent from our emotions.
Oh.
That every behavior is driven by an emotional state. Even people, this is so funny to me, even people who say, I'm non-emotional and I don't make emotional decisions.
They make emotional decisions and they are emotional.
It is, exactly. There are emotions behind the armor of not being emotional.
That's right.
Everything we do is emotional.
Yeah.
So when we learn to have maturation, we learn to have emotional growth, and we're living in the health of what's happening. And from a neuroscience basis, you can't have an emotion without your brain doing something.
That's right.
And so if we understand what the brain's doing, then we can manage the way the emotions are out. If we don't like an emotion, if we don't like the way something's feeling, there are ways that you can, I want to say manipulate, but sometimes manipulate has a negative connotation.
Right.
We have the ability to drive or to change, to adjust, to mold what's going on in our brains, simply, sometimes by thoughts, sometimes by actions. But whenever we use the different parts of our brain, we get new experiences.
Yes.
And then we can lead from ultimately a wholehearted place, which is what I'm fighting for. Well, I have loved our first episode together. Looking forward to so many more. Can't wait till we get to conflict resolution and talk through kind of what happens there, both on a tactical level and then in an emotional level. But I'm just so proud to have you as a close friend to Tina and I, and looking forward to what we're going to do in the future.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed today as well, and I can't wait to see where our conversations take us. I'm excited for the journey, let me tell you.
Well, nobody knows.
Yeah,
where are
these
conversations
That's all right.
going? That's awesome. Thank you for joining us today. You might be wondering, well, what's next? I want to encourage you to go to our website at redinkrevival.com. There you're going to find our resources, retreats, upcoming special events, and a growing bank of content. We're trying our best to increase what is resource available to you. Just be patient with us as we grow and as we do put more content, but make a habit of going to check it out because we believe that there will be things that will catalyze change in your leadership. Sign up for our free e-newsletter to stay abreast of all that's available, and when our newsletters begin to roll out, you'll already be on the list. Of specific note, we're hosting our next Red Ink Revival Leadership Retreats for pastors, spouses, church staff, and all other leaders very soon. And I hope everyone can make it to one of these life-changing events. The dates and more info is always at redinkrevival.com. Well, everything that we're building is to resource you to be a wholehearted leader. I'd love for you to be a part of our tribe, and I can't wait till our next episode. I'm glad that you were with us. We can't wait to see you next time.